you all in a shading tutorial and drawing video about how to draw dragons. So I'm doing this digitally, so things are going to be a little different, but I will be doing everything, describing it all with how to do this with also just a pencil and paper. So we're going to start with our dragon first. And you can see that I have this little very light layout just so I can keep track. But I'm going to still be drawing this with you all. So we're going to start with the basics and we're going to start with the head. The best way to start with this is just a basic circle. I'm going to change pencils really quick. Go with, oops. There we go. So we're just going to start with a very basic head, and we're going to start with just a circle. And so to form the head, we're going to start with a circle, and I'm going to draw a T line basically to help judge where I want the eyes and where I want the nose to be. So we're going to start with that. And then I'm just going to start filling it in. So from the top of the circle, I'm going to connect it to this point on our T line. Then I'm going to bring that down as if I'm drawing like a person's face. Well, then we're just going to start extending it. We're going to make more of a rectangle shape here. I didn't bring this line all the way down, but looking at it, I want the nose of the dragon to be a little longer. So I'm just going to extend that. And I'm drawing a very much like a boxy shape right here. You can use your second line in the T line where you connected this and draw across so you get the like a good good width. And then we're gonna just start connecting all of these lines together, almost like a chin, but not exactly. If you've ever drawn a dog before or a wolf, it has a similar face to that. So I'm then going to just connect this line and this line to our T line. And then we start seeing more of a head shape. It's just extended, it's more animalistic. And then we're just going to connect. I'm just going to connect it as like a final, like kind of sealing it off. Just for my own personal, like, understanding of where I'm going to add the horns next. My next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding the neck. Now, I'm going to want to put spines on the back of my dragon, and I want to make sure the spines stay um, in the middle of the neck. So, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to draw a guideline first of this line. And this isn't going to actually be the top of the neck. This is just my connector or my guideline for where the center of the neck is going to be. I'm then going to actually start the neck here. I'm going to wrap it around and it's going to intersect because it's going to bend. It's in more of an arc shape. And then I'm going to take this line here and going to pull that down. So then we start having the neck of our dragon, and I'm going to seal off this section with a V shape before we go into the chest. Now I'm realizing I'm not all the way happy with where that baseline for the neck is, so I'm actually going to erase it really quick. And now seeing the full shape, I actually see that the spines are are going to go a little bit less, a little shorter. So I'm pulling that here. We can see the neck is basically twisting around. This is the arrow showing that. So there's our very basic shape for our dragon's neck and head. What I'm gonna do next is I'm going to move on to the body, and we're just trying to pencil in all the like very basic shapes, and then we're gonna get more detailed with it and start working on making it look more like a dragon instead of like a wolf with just a very long neck, and make it look more distinct. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna kind of pencil in where I want the body to be. Now this dragon looks like it's flying up, and it's posed like it's almost standing on its hind legs. So I'm going to start penciling in where the front 2 legs would be. So I'm going to add 2 circles here. And then the chest is, I'm going to adjust where my neck triangle is, because that, where that connects, is going to kind of be the chest of the dragon. If you've ever looked at a horse or any animal with like a longer neck, you'll know that there is more of a V shape that leads into the chest. So we're gonna work on that. And then for the legs, I'm going to mark my elbow is here and the foot here. And I wanted to have larger feet. We're gonna do the same here to kind of just mark where they are. And then I'm gonna start connecting the arms together. And then you'll kind of taper it here to make it a little thinner to be like a wrist. And then you can start filling in some claws. I'm just doing very basic triangles here, kind of making this foot shape. I'm not doing anything too detailed because I'm not fully sure how I want it to look yet, and I might go back and change it. And that's something you can always do, is if you're not happy with it the first go, you can always change it. I'm gonna do the same thing here of kind of filling in these claws, adding some definition and like more of a wrist here, and adding another claw. So now that we have that, we're gonna do the wings last. So I'm gonna actually start on the face, and I'm using our T lines. I'm going to position the eyes right in the middle of them. Oops. So I'm gonna start just filling in these eyes. I'm doing you can do any style of eye you want. If you want to make it cute and go with really big eyes, you can. If you want to go more simplistic, you can also do that. I'm going for pretty like reptilian eyes, so I'm doing something a little more narrow, and then I'm adding just a very simple pupil in there. And then I'm going to go to the end of the snout, and I'm just going to add 2 little triangles, and there are our dragon's nostrils. Now it still doesn't look super dragony yet, so what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to look at where the neck is on two even sides, right here and right here. I'm going to make 2 more triangles, and those are going to be our dragon's horns. Now, if you want to add maybe like fins or gills or maybe 2 sets of horns, feel free to do that and start kind of customizing your dragon to how you want it to look. If you want it to look a little more fierce, I'm going to add some thorns or spikes on the side of the face. I'm also going to add some above the eyebrows. And then using this guideline here, that's where I'm going to start filling in these little nose spikes. And with that, I know that it's going in the right area of the face. I'm going to add one right in between the horns as well, because you can see with how heads are curved, you can see that the natural progression would be like that. So I'm just going to fill that in as well. There, we're starting to get a pretty fierce looking dragon. I'm then going to come up here and add, with my guiding line that I added earlier, start adding the spikes down the neck. And then around here, I'm going to add the belly plates. And what I'm going to do is sketch in this line right here to see kind of like my indicator, because here's the chest. And then where would this connect? Right here. And then I'm going to use little triangular shapes to kind of make it look like it's overlapping, kind of like medieval armor. And I'm just going to do that to add that detail in. And I'm going to fill in the rest of the chest like that, and the rest of the body with these belly plates or these scales underneath the dragon. What we're gonna do next is we're going to add I'm gonna actually add some more detail to the body. So I'm gonna add just some spikes on like the elbows. I think it fits. And then I'm going to start adding the wings. So the wings would connect here and here. So we have to kind of fill in the blanks. So I know that one of the wings would start at about the shoulder here. So I will put that marker, and I'm going to just kind of guess where I would want the wing to be. So I want it here. I know that this is like the vague area of where it would be. And then I'm just going to start filling it in. And I'm going to make kind of this big like crescent moon shape. And then I'm filling it in at the end here. So we have like a wing spike at the top. Then we're going to pull it down. And you can make these pretty big. And you can then pull up. And you get this fun kind of like bat-like shape or a bat wing shape. I don't really know how to describe it. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a connecting line here, and I'm going to pull it down again to get a similar shape. We're going to go up again to get this cool spike effect, and then we're going to go a little shorter, and we're going to go in right here. Now you might say that wing's not filled in. Like, what are we gonna do there? And this is where we're gonna add the wings webbing. And then so I'm gonna make three more crescent moon shapes to connect these spikes together, and then that would connect to the back. What I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna kind of pull down and add the illusion or the idea that these are different section and these are also spikes. So I'm just filling it in and connecting the lines. We're gonna do the same over here. The wing would start at about here. So I'm going to kind of put it where the shoulder would be, pull up and make that crescent moon shape again, do that and pull for the spiked shape down. Now this one goes off my paper, which is okay. If it doesn't go off your paper, that is fine. You can just do the same technique you did on this wing on this one. So I'm just going to pull over here, and then I am going to start more or less just guessing where I want these. So I'm actually going to do the reverse. Instead of working from this side, I'm going to actually be working from here. So there's the first spike, and then there's the illusion of the second, and then we're going to connect them with that webbing. Now I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with the rest of the body. I kind of want it to be like curved off to the side, like the rest of the dragon's body is going this way. So I'm just going to do that. So from this point, or this point right here, I'm just gonna kind of make this twisty line to imply more dragon behind the wings. So with that, we have the base of our dragon, and I think it's looking really cool. Now we can add more detail and depth through shading it actually, and I think that would be a very fun thing to explore. Um, and so we're gonna start with looking at that. So to start our shading process, we first need to choose our light source. So basically, where is the sun in this image? I'm gonna place the sun or our light source right up here. It's gonna be shining down. And basically what that means is these parts that where the light touches is going to be a lighter color, while the lower parts are going to be darker, therefore they're going to be shaded in. So to do this, I don't have any colors, unfortunately, and I believe you will also just be having basically just pencil and paper. And there's a lot of techniques to use for shading with just a normal pencil that will take your art to like the next level, and it's really fun. So something else I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my eraser, and I'm just going to be really, really delicate, and I'm going to start cleaning up my edges. And I'm just gonna clean those up. And we're gonna go up here. Gonna just If I erase a little too much, then I'm just going to draw it back in again, and you can do the same. Just because I'm doing it digitally doesn't mean it's too different. So I'm just going to be really delicate and erase around some of my lines, make sure it looks right. I can also see if where I want to add more detail, if I'm like, oh, the guidelines are actually causing like a cool effect, then I can go back and do that. And you can just use your eraser to kind of clean up some areas, and we'll make room for our shading. And I'm going to erase my joints my joint guidelines I put in, some around the feet. So we're going to just clean up first. If yours doesn't look exactly like mine, that's totally okay. Everyone has a different style. If you wanted to make your dragon a little more cutesy or a little more realistic, then you can totally do that. This is just kind of the basis for it. If you just want to learn about shading and draw something else, you can also do that. Okay, so I'm just cleaning with those lines cleaned up. I'm gonna just fill those in. What we're gonna do next is we're going to look at how to show shading in our art. So one of the easiest methods for shading, if you're just using like a normal pencil, is something called cross hatching. So cross hatching is when you basically just make these little like tic-tac-toe marks and overlap the lines a lot. It's not scribbling in like this, it's actually using lines and then filling them in like this. And that can be very cool. So if let's do, before we start working on our dragon, what I actually want to do is just show like a very basic example of shading. One of the most easy ones to do is shading a sphere. So we're going to use the same light source. The light source is reflecting on this ball, and then the light would be hitting right here, and then right here would be the darker area. So we're going to do cross hatching first, and we're just going to fill in the lowest area with these lines, and then we're going to add these tic-tac-toe marks and make it a little darker. And then we're just going to do that. Add just normal lines to show it's a little lighter. And to get more control of your pencil, you can change how dark it is and how dark the color is by how hard you press on your pencil. So if I press super hard, I get this really dark line. If I press really lightly, I get a lighter color. And you can do that with your shading. So if I go really light here, you can see, oh, well, there's still shadow, but it's not as intense. So we're just going to do that. And there you go. And then we're working to pure light light source here into a darker source down here. And you can try this as much as you want and figure out how hard you need to press on your pencil before it breaks, or how hard or just like how light you can get your pencil to look, how dark you can get it to look. Just experiment with your materials. That's always that's always a very fun activity to get to know what you're working with. So I'll let you all take a few minutes to work on cross hatching and doing all of that. So we're just going to take a quick minute. Okay, and if you didn't have time, I can let you, you can always pause the video and restart it. No problem at all. So we're going to start with this light source. So where is the light source hitting on this dragon? The answer is here, 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 here. Basically anything that is at the top of the dragon is going to be impacted by the light source, and as it goes down it's going to be less affected, or if anything's blocking out the light. So these horns are blocking out the light that would be underneath it, because this is a 3-dimensional dragon. It might not look like it, but there's dimension to it. So I'm going to start with the most basic places of where things would be shaded. We're going to start with behind the horns, and I'm going to do the cross-hatching method, where I'm just going to add these little tic-tac-toe marks underneath the horns. They're right here. And look at, and then I'm going to pull them a little farther because the shadow is being cast up the horn. So the horn ends about here. So it would go to about here on the dragon. So I'm just using the little tic-tac-toe marks, and I'm pressing pretty hard to get that dark, dark shadow. And then if you want, you can start using the lighter marks to pull the shadow forward as it slowly gradients out into the lighter color. So I'm going to do that here as well. It's going to get a little lighter, and I'm not pressing super hard at all. And look at that. We're already getting some dimension on our dragon. Now we're going to look at the horns again, and I want to add more detail on them. So I'm going to add these little lines to imply that the horns have some texture to them. Because they have texture, that means they have like little divots and grooves that would also change the lighting and make them a little more detailed. So what I'm going to do after I add in my horn details is I'm going to start adding those little tic-tac-toe marks across and underneath, across the horns where they're not being hit by the light. We're going to do that here as well. Oops, chose the wrong side. I'm going to do that here as well. We're just doing these little tic-tac-toe marks, and I'm pressing pretty lightly here. I don't want it to blend in with this shadow. And then with adding some texture, I'm just going to add some little lines around the horns to imply that there are shadows there, therefore implying there's texture there. We're just going to add some of that around the horns. You don't have to, if you don't want it to be this detailed, you don't have to make it this detailed. If you kind of just want your dragon to be a little more cartoony, then that's that out of the video. Okay. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to add the shading on the bottom. So as I said, the sun is hitting right here and here. So the sun isn't reaching this area down here. It's actually being covered by the dragon's face and neck. So the next place we're gonna add shading is down here. And so I'm gonna do the same tic-tac-toe marks. We're just going to do that all over. And I'm just doing it in the very basic locations of down here. And then I'm also going to start shading. Because the dragon's neck is more bent, there is a natural curve to how the shading would be. And I'm just actually going to sketch that out for everyone right here, in which it goes, where it would be shaded would be like all the way down here. So I'm going to start doing pretty big cross hatching and tic-tac-toe marks across the chest, because that's covered by the head. That's casting the shadow here. We're just going to start filling that in. And I could have chosen a bigger pencil, but I didn't. You can also see how thick you can get your lines by seeing how hard you press or how light you press, because you can and work with how thick you want your lines to be. The lighter you press, the thinner they'll be, and the lighter they will be. And then you can also always go over lines multiple times. I do that a lot, where I overlap a lot of lines together. Okay, so with that, I think our dragon's belly is looking pretty well shaded. Another thing I'm going to add is for muscle definition, to show that the neck is kind of twisting around. So I'm going to add a little bit of shading right here, because this would be casting a shadow over this. And it's pretty light. I'm not going to add like super dark shading like I did down here, just lighter. Another place is where the joints are. So around the shoulders, we're going to start adding. I would add some tic-tac-toe marks. Over here, I'm going to add some as well. And look at that. As you see, we're getting a pretty nice, like comic book looking dragon. Another place is how the head is projecting a shadow onto the wing, so we're going to add it here. We're also going to add it here as well. And then this is another place the head would cast a shadow. Another place is where the arms would fold, so where the elbows would be. Something fun you can do if you're a little confused on how shading works is if you have a light, to put your hand near away from the light, but enough that it casts a shadow, kind of understand, and then put that over a variety of things, change where your lights are, and see like how different shadows work. Something I would always look at when I was learning how to draw was I would look at how my like clothes were folded under light and see how like the folds of my clothes had different shadows and different gradients and how they looked, and how they responded to light. So you can look around at a lot of real life examples to help you draw more fantastical things. So another place I'm going to start adding shading is right here. And I'm also going to add some behind. Another place would be the arm is over the body of the dragon. So we're going to add those tic-tac-toe marks. And we're just going to keep adding. With that, we're starting to get a very cool looking dragon. I'm going to also start adding some definition to the wings, and there'd be some light shading underneath here just to add some like muscle. And it's always good to do long and loose line work so that it always has a sense of motion to it. We're going to also just add, if you're like, I'm not sure where I want to add shading, you can also sometimes just add it for fun. You don't have to be exact all the time and analytical over it. If you just think some parts seem a little too wide open without any shading or depth, or even color, if you're working with color, you can add it there to help make it balanced. Because it's always a little subjective and always a little more to like your imagination. So I'm going to add some more shading back here as well, which is a little tight. And with that, I think we have a pretty fun looking dragon. And with the shading done, I'm going to start adding a few more details. Just because I feel like can add some more to our dragon. And something always good to do is, oops, I accidentally opened my color wheel. When you're working on things, is to start adding texture, which I've talked about with the horns. You can keep doing that on the little spikes that you've added. If you added them, you can start adding some little lines there. I just do some pretty pretty tight thin line work on these details, just kind of apply. Oops, I forgot to shade the claws, so I'm going to add those tic-tac-toe marks right down here. We're going to do that again. Look at that, adding some more detail. Now, something you might, I forgot about this, something you might want to consider doing if you're like, I have an idea for how I want to, something you can also do is take a very dark color. So we're actually I'm gonna make this really big, and I'm gonna use my pencil like it's on its side. So we're gonna go like this. It's a little too dark, but that's okay. You can add shading by using your pencil and on its side and getting that like wide sweeping stroke, and then using your eraser to start pulling to erase and add shading there. So if I want this a little lighter, well, I still have that color there of the gray of the pencil. I can also take away from it. Pencil is a very forgiving medium, and so you can always give and take and add more. And so part of it is using your eraser as a pencil itself. Have you ever had the opportunity to just scribble completely with pencil, like cover an entire page in just pencil, and then use your eraser to make art? That's another way you can do shading, where you add all the dark colors and then you start using your eraser instead to like add that shading. I had to take a little sip of my coffee. Okay, I'm gonna erase our sun now because I think we have a kind of I hope you all got the concept of shading in. And so what we're gonna do next is we're gonna start just adding our little details in. So I'm gonna add some scales around, and I just kind of want to fill in the empty space that we have because there is a fair amount of empty space that doesn't have shading, that doesn't have lighting. So I'm going to start adding little scales. And I'm just doing little U shapes wherever I kind of want them to be. And then you're just going to do that. And you can do as many or as little of these as you want. There's no obligation. If you're like happy with your dragon and you're like, I don't really want to add more, you don't have to. But if you want to add more detail, if you want to add horns, if you want to add like a little bow or or little other details, they don't have to just be scales. You can kind of add whatever you want to this, and that's the fun of drawing. And I tend to do my scales in sets of 3, so I do like 3 little ones, and I think that adds a pretty good impression of scales and texture. If you want, you can also, I'm gonna add some little smoke swirls coming out of my dragon's nostrils, like it's gonna breathe fire. If you want to switch this out for fire, you can. You can also consider that a light source and start and add more light spots to your dragon. So I'm just gonna add these little smoke swirls, make them a little darker. I'm just doing really loose, repetitive line work for these to give the impression that it's moving, that it's more, that it's not solid. And that's something, again, I'm going to also clean this up a little bit. I don't really like how that looks. Again, so much of this comes down to what you like and if you like how some things look. So just because I didn't like how that looked doesn't mean it's you have to do the exact same thing I did. So now we've added our little smoke swirls, but something always good to do is to keep your line art very loose and fluid because it keeps the impression of movement. And with that, we have a pretty nice looking cartoony dragon, mythical dragon, whatever style you decide to go with. But if you followed this kind of these steps, it should be look pretty fluid and like it is moving and isn't super like stuck in one place. And that's something to practice, is to always make sure your line work is, you don't have to stick to your sketch all the time. You can always have some creative freedom. If something isn't looking right, you can always change it. And that's the fun thing about art, is being able to make sure you can change it to be how you want it to look. And I want to add more shading here, so I'm going to add more shading here. I want this line to be a little darker, so I'm going to add some more definition to it. But your art, you can make it look however you desire. So with that, I'm just going to add in some final little details. I hope you had a good time learning how to draw our dragon friend here. And I hope and thank you for drawing with me. Continue these practices, and I would love for you all to work more on shading because it's very fun and can really add that fun little extra dimension of to your art and make it look really cool. So I hope you had a good time learning about shading. I hope you had a good time drawing this dragon, and thank you for drawing with me today.